We've just got some breaking news in from Buckingham Palace, folks. So this statement has just come in from Buckingham Palace, and I'll read it for you. It goes on to say, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and...
The announcement from Buckingham Palace arrived with an air of urgency that immediately captured public attention. According to the statement, King Charles III had initiated a formal process concerning royal titles, styles, and a major restructuring of security surrounding the line of succession. Unlike routine palace matters, this decision was not communicated through the usual administrative channels. Instead, before sunrise, sealed summonses were hand-delivered to a select group of senior members of the royal family, instructing them to attend an emergency meeting behind closed doors. The notice carried only a brief but unmistakable subject: new succession security. Within minutes of the summonses being delivered, private engagements were cancelled, security teams altered their schedules, and movement around Buckingham Palace became unusually restricted. Prince William was seen entering the king's private wing with a solemn expression that reflected the gravity of the situation unfolding behind palace walls. It quickly became clear that this was far more than a routine review of royal procedures. King Charles intended to introduce an entirely new security framework dedicated exclusively to protecting those closest to inheriting the British throne, including Prince William, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. The proposed structure would place the immediate heirs under a separate command designed to operate independently of the wider palace system, reflecting concerns that existing arrangements were no longer sufficient. Before the meeting officially began, the king sat alone reviewing the final security briefing. Witnesses described him removing his glasses, quietly placing the documents on his desk, and sitting in thoughtful silence. His expression revealed not anger, but sadness. The issue confronting him had moved beyond questions of public image or ceremonial protocol. It involved the safety of his son and grandchildren, whose lives represented the future of the monarchy itself. Outside the council chamber, Prince William paused briefly before entering. He asked one of his protection officers whether Catherine and the children had already been moved under revised security arrangements. Receiving confirmation brought little visible relief. Whatever had triggered these emergency measures, William understood that the threat had already come far too close to his family. Soon afterward, Catherine, Princess of Wales, arrived alongside Queen Camilla and Princess Anne. Anne carefully observed the room without speaking, while Camilla immediately noticed that her private secretary had been denied entry. Even senior palace officials, including the Lord Chamberlain, were required to surrender their mobile phones before entering, along with senior members of the security services. One absence was particularly noticeable. Prince Harry had not been invited, despite remaining in the broader line of succession. His exclusion suggested that the meeting focused not only on physical protection, but also on trust, access to sensitive information, and operational control within the royal household. When everyone had taken their seats, King Charles addressed the council directly. He explained that a critical security boundary had been crossed, and that the existing system could no longer be relied upon. The threat, he said, was no longer simply directed at the institution of the monarchy, but had begun to affect the family responsible for carrying it into the future. Behind every discussion about protocols and procedures stood 4 individuals: William, George, Charlotte, and Louis, whose safety had become the central concern. William understood that every decision made that day would shape his children's lives for years to come. Catherine feared that stronger protection might come at the cost of their children's freedom and normal upbringing. Camilla worried that changes would reduce her household's influence over important royal affairs. Meanwhile, King Charles faced an agonizing choice between maintaining family unity and protecting the crown against a danger he could no longer dismiss. As discussions continued, William realized the new structure would grant him unprecedented authority over the protection of his own household. As heir to the throne, he would gain direct operational control over the security of Catherine and their children. Yet the responsibility came with significant consequences. Every family journey, school trip, holiday, and private outing would now be subject to stricter monitoring, planning, and review. During a quiet moment, Catherine spoke privately to William. She agreed that stronger security was necessary, but insisted she would never allow fear to dominate George, Charlotte, and Louis's childhood. William responded that the danger was no longer theoretical. Sensitive information connected to their family had already been exposed, and ignoring the reality would place their children at even greater risk. The conversation reflected not disagreement, but the difficult balance between protecting their children and preserving as much normal family life as possible. Across the table, Queen Camilla recognized another implication of the proposed reforms. The exclusion of her private secretary signaled that her household could lose access to highly sensitive information concerning the heirs. Looking toward the king for reassurance, she found none. Princess Anne remained calm throughout the discussion. She had been selected to oversee compliance with the new system, ensuring that every royal household followed identical security standards without exception. Her appointment demonstrated where the king's greatest confidence now rested. Charles believed Anne would enforce the new rules impartially, regardless of whose interests they affected. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when the name of Prince George entered the discussion. Senior security officials disclosed that an internal breach had exposed confidential information relating to the young prince's movements. William tightened his grip on his pen while Catherine fell silent. The issue had moved beyond questions of palace administration. Their own child had potentially been placed at risk. Camilla questioned whether the threat might have been exaggerated, prompting visible disappointment from the king. To explain the seriousness of the situation, officials reviewed the events that had triggered the emergency meeting. 6 days earlier, Windsor Castle had hosted a confidential succession continuity exercise intended to test emergency procedures should a national crisis disrupt normal royal operations. Only a handful of senior royals and security officers were aware of the rehearsal. Every route, vehicle, secure room, and movement schedule had been carefully planned and stored within a restricted palace security system accessible only to a small number of authorized personnel. William had been assured that no ordinary staff member could access the complete operational plan, while George himself had simply been told they were participating in a routine security exercise. William wanted to protect his son from the heavy burden associated with his future role. During the rehearsal, however, an unauthorized vehicle unexpectedly appeared beside the precise route George was scheduled to travel. Acting immediately, William ordered his son's vehicle to turn around before reaching the exposed section of the journey. He personally greeted George upon his return, calmly assuring him everything was under control. Only after the young prince had been safely escorted inside did William allow his frustration and concern to become visible. King Charles received news of the incident during dinner. Disturbed by the revelation, he dismissed everyone from the room and remained alone to consider the implications. The breach felt deeply personal because the compromised information had originated not from an external source, but from somewhere inside the palace system itself. Within hours, investigators produced their first report. Access logs revealed that the rehearsal schedule had been opened using a computer terminal assigned to Queen Camilla's household 37 minutes before the unauthorized vehicle appeared. Further examination showed that the same terminal had previously accessed confidential documents detailing temporary accommodation plans for William, Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis during an upcoming renovation project. Camilla firmly denied authorizing either access. She insisted neither she nor her senior staff had knowingly viewed the restricted files. Princess Anne responded that intent was no longer the primary issue. Regardless of motive, the system had failed under credentials assigned to Camilla's office. King Charles then asked a question that transformed a technical investigation into a deeply personal confrontation. Looking directly at his wife, he asked whether she could personally guarantee that every individual serving under her authority remained completely loyal to protecting the succession. Silence filled the room. Security officials outlined three possibilities. Someone had acted carelessly, someone's credentials had been compromised, or someone had deliberately accessed information they had no authority to view. Regardless of which explanation proved correct, the immediate response had to be the same. Access permissions would be suspended, sensitive systems locked down, and tighter controls introduced until the investigation reached its conclusion. Camilla's household was informed that it would temporarily lose access to transport schedules, protected residences, and continuity planning systems containing emergency arrangements for the monarchy. She argued that such restrictions would publicly humiliate her and undermine her authority within the palace. King Charles answered firmly that protecting George, Charlotte, and Louis mattered more than preserving anyone's reputation. Camilla replied that authority weakened by humiliation could be just as damaging as a security failure. Charles calmly responded that authority without trust had already become dangerous. William then addressed the Queen directly, stating that information linked to her office had placed his son in danger. Camilla objected that he was assuming guilt before the investigation had concluded. William answered with measured emotion that, as a father, he could not wait for complete certainty while his child's safety remained uncertain. Princess Anne was then asked why she had been selected to supervise the new security structure. She explained that she had no competing household interests to defend, and that her only responsibility was protecting the crown and those destined to inherit it. King Charles then disclosed that the Windsor incident was not the first warning the palace had received. 2 earlier security irregularities had been quietly resolved without public attention because he had feared family conflict would damage the monarchy's reputation. William declared that he would no longer support compromises, allowing the existing system to remain unchanged. Charles recognized that he now faced a defining decision. Approving the new structure would transfer significant operational authority to William, elevate Anne's oversight responsibilities, and reduce Camilla's role in matters concerning the immediate heirs. The proposed reforms granted William direct authority over the operational protection of Catherine and their children. Princess Anne would conduct formal quarterly reviews of compliance across every royal household, while reporting directly to the king. Charles would retain constitutional authority, but routine decisions involving the heirs would bypass much of the traditional palace network. Sensitive information would be shared with fewer people,